Just had a run in here real quick. Back in my office, 5 o'clock advisory just ended. Did you have a chance to see it?
Just took a look at it, and there's some changes we're about to go over here in just a moment.
Yeah.
The story remaining the same, though, still looking like a major hurricane
Yeah.
is headed to the west coast of Florida, likely by Wednesday of next week.
Rapid intensification is set to get going. This is really the big picture. We want you to understand that we understand the big picture, and we know a hurricane is going to make landfall along the west coast, probably sometime, I guess, during the day on Wednesday or Wednesday evening. The problem is the details, it's the specifics, and those details are critical because they let you know what you can expect at your house, and that's really all that matters.
Right now, this is turning into a storm of miles, and that's really been our discussions about this. 10 miles north or south could mean all the world in terms of impacts, ranging from storm surge to hurricane-force winds, and that's why we're paying such close attention to every single update with this system, especially now that it's a hurricane. As of earlier this afternoon, Paul, a very quickly organizing system, and this is why we've seen such big swings from this being likely a high-end tropical storm week hurricane to the Hurricane Center's first forecast with this going up to a Category 2 to Category 3 system as it approaches Florida. It has come together quickly, and the latest forecast advisory here bringing those winds now up to 85 miles per hour with now an eastward movement at 7 miles per hour, Paul.
Yeah, and all signs are, and we've been looking at some of the hurricane models today, there's going to be a period where the intensification is going to be extremely rapid, and it's not impossible this becomes a Category 4 or a Category 5 in the Gulf of Mexico. Some of the most rapid intensification we see in this part of the basin, the Atlantic basin. Now the question is, what happens when it nears us? Does it stay at that intensity? Does it weaken a little bit? I think there will be some weakening. There's going to be a lot of shear, but the problem is sometimes when storms weaken, they get bigger, the wind field expands, but more importantly, even if it does weaken, it doesn't in any way, shape, or form do anything to help us as far as the storm surge.
Yes.
It's not going to say, okay, well, at least it's a 3, so the storm surge won't be that bad. The storm surge is going to be bad. And in some places, because of the path, which is now perpendicular and not parallel to our coast, the storm surge could even be higher and probably will be higher in places.
And that's the biggest difference between this and Helene. We think it's likely that some portion of the west coast of Florida will receive much higher impacts in terms of the storm surge and the strong winds, quite literally because this is approaching at a 90-degree angle rather than what we were looking at with Helene, where that passed 100 miles off the shoreline. That's what's got our attention with this storm.
Right. There's been, the forecast point, the landfall point, and you just touched on this, is extremely critical to what people are going to expect, because everything north of the point, the winds blow from the east and northeast. So you saw Ian's landfall, Fort Myers Beach, along into the south of the eye, devastation.
Yes.
Widespread. But here in Tampa Bay, we had an east wind. The bay emptied, and we really had no significant storm surge. The storm was a big problem, especially in Sarasota County and inland. So that is why the landfall point really makes a big difference. There's been a subtle shift, we think, in the track models today.
Yes.
It's a little bit. We don't know if it's going to continue, and we'll have better sense of if it will continue in the next day or two. And I don't mean to keep on talking here, and I want to let you talk too, is that
it's good information.
We don't have a lot of time to kind of wait and see. Let's wait till Tuesday and see what the turn is going to be. There's probably going to be a lot of people that are going to have to evacuate that may not experience the worst of the storm. We're running into a problem with we need some time. We don't have the time, and we're not exactly sure where the storm is going to make landfall.
Exactly. Everybody that is at least in the general vicinity of this needs to have a plan to get their stuff together and leave if they are called to. That's kind of been the messaging here. Checking your evacuation zone. Today is really the day to do that if you don't know yours by now. We've had several systems this year, and hopefully you've at least taken the precautions to look into that. But as you mentioned, we've seen some shifts with the forecast models. We're still in that window where we get the windshield wiper effect. They tend to drift one way one day. Yesterday, for instance, they were drifting north of downtown Tampa. Now they're kind of drifting a little bit farther south as of this morning. Changes like this will occur as this system materializes, and we're really not going to have a completely clear, concise picture like we did with Helene because of the steering pattern until we get much closer to the eventual landfall of this storm. But that landfall point means everything. The timing here on your screen with the Fox model showing this storm that's already fairly well organized is only going to get stronger as this skirts just north of the Yucatan Peninsula. I believe I saw that the tropical storm warnings in the last advisory, Paul, were updated to hurricane watches for the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yes.
So they're now anticipating even stronger winds there than they had once expected to occur from this. This eventually takes that turn to the north and east, may encounter a little bit of shear, as Paul pointed out, which could bring down wind speeds a tiny bit. But either way, we're not talking about a rapid weakening storm. This would be going from a Category 4 to a Category 3 storm. No big difference there. You're still going to receive some substantial impacts from this, but that time of arrival looking more and more likely to be the second half of Wednesday. That's what the Hurricane Center has highlighted, and we'll see if that stays true over the next few days.
Yeah, and I think we need to be, this is an important point to make. We talk a lot about, you know, we know the big population center is Tampa, Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, but we're cognizant that it's just, we have a 10-county viewing area. Mm-hmm. Everyone matters the same. Doesn't matter where you live, you're as important to anyone, everywhere you go. So when we talk about shifts, sometimes like a shift to the south or north, yeah, it's better for Tampa Bay, but that means someone else in our viewing area has a higher risk mm-hmm. of getting the bigger storm surge. And anywhere in our state, and we care about everyone in the state. So yeah, shifts are good for someone, but they end up becoming a bigger problem for someone else. So there's no escaping the storm. It just kind of puts different population areas under a bigger risk.
And because of the angle of approach and how confident we are that it's looking almost certain at this point. You never want to say that. There's always chances things could change, but National Hurricane Center has incredibly high confidence that somebody in Florida is going to be receiving this storm.
And we do too.
Yes, and I'm pointing them out because typically they're very cautious with their wording, and the fact that they're acknowledging the fact that life-threatening storm surge is again going to be likely for portions of the west coast of Florida, it just paints the picture that this is a very serious scenario with this storm.
It really is, and we've been, I've been watching this, like 4 hours sleep last night, up early today, sitting at the computer, and you really almost have to watch it nonstop to look at any subtle changes, because it's to the point where, yeah, the models are important, but you really have to watch it almost hour by hour. Mm-hmm. You have to look at every satellite picture. You have to look at every recon report, because all of that really matters on what's going to happen to us down the road. And one thing we've seen today is, I posted a picture this morning at the first light of the day. Mm-hmm. You could tell there was a storm getting organized, and now we're looking at the latest satellite picture, and it's apparent the storm is going to undergo some rapid intensification.
Hurricane hunters finding an eye wall beginning to close off as well, which is very big news in terms of the strengthening process of this. When you have that consolidated, it's preparing to rapidly intensify, or at least intensify from where it is right now. Look at the wind speeds here heading into Wednesday morning. This is just to paint the picture that impacts are going to be still widespread from this system. Even though it might not be as large as Helene, many spots are going to see that yellow shaded region come on shore, which are at least tropical storm force winds. And because of the speed this is going to be progressing through the peninsula, a lot of those potentially hurricane force winds and heavier rainfall impacts will be felt in areas inland that may have missed out on a lot of these impacts from Helene as well.
So, and yeah, this is true for you. So I'm driving to work mm-hmm. today, and I'm going through the neighborhood, and what do I see? What do I see? Piles of debris.
And
I tell you, you can drive from this TV station. A lot of you watching know where the TV station is. It's on Kennedy Boulevard in Tampa, just to the west of downtown. You can drive a mile from here, and it's still furniture piled up on the front lawn because of the flooding in a lot of the one-story homes on West Shore. This is not just here. This is up and down the entire coast. There's no time to, there's no time. There's very, very little time, I should say, to get rid of it all, because a lot of it needs to be professionally removed.
And it's everybody at once, too, needing it gone, which complicates this even farther.
How does all of that play into this when there's so much debris sitting around from Helene? And then we have to talk about, the emotional aspect of how difficult Helene was for so many people, and now we're dealing with this again. This is tough, and the only thing I can say about that is, Nash, is that the most important thing through all of it, the furniture piled up, ripping out your drywall, all of that stuff stinks. But the most important thing going forward is your life. So you want to be in a position Thursday and Friday of this week where you say, that's stunk again, and people may use different words than that, but we're alive and the family's okay, and then you kind of move ahead forward. But this whole setup is extremely problematic, and it's tough for people to deal with.
Disappointing.
And we really need to spend the next couple of days kind of walking you through this. And I think that the challenge that we have right now, Nash, is we still can't give specific numbers and how high the surge will be, because we don't know exactly where the storm is going to make landfall. So we don't know exactly where the strongest winds are going to be.